Welcome, everybody. My name's Andrew Stuck. I'm one of the co-producers of Walk, Listen, Create, and we're a not-for-profit. We're registered in Belgium. That means we can sneak into the EU and get EU funding. And that's what I need to point out right now, is that this event is part funded by the EU's Create programme in the likes of Walk, which is Walking Arts and local communities. And there are 7 partners in 5 different countries. And we're just at that point, actually, where we're welcoming a new partner because our original Belgian partner had to drop out. So a round of applause to Millennia Principal, who very kindly stepped up and has become our Belgian partner. So we're running lots of different events, as many of you will know. Those of you who are new to this, if you haven't added your biography or headshot to your profile on Walk, Listen, Create, please do. And please do also sign up to the Walk Together newsletter. So we've got 4 fabulous guests this evening, and I'm just going to ask them to introduce themselves one at a time. And then we're going to go into the presentations. They each have a slide share, so they're going to share their own slides. If we have a technical issue, we'll give you a Google URL and you can follow the presentations on a Google link, but hopefully you'll be able to understand what's going on from their slide share. And the first presenter will be Pam Patterson. What we'll invite you to do is, if you have a query on clarification on something that one of the presenters made, then please put that in the chat and we'll invite you to ask that question. But otherwise, what we're anticipating is that we'll have a discussion between the panelists briefly at the end of the presentations, and then we're going to throw it open to you, the audience. Please remember, as I say, put all questions, opinions, and comments in the chat, and we'll invite you to say your opinion, comment, or question. And at the time you do that, we'd like you to introduce yourself and self-describe yourself. So I'm going to hand over first to my co-host, Mary, to introduce herself.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us to the second episode of this series, which is on walking arts and health. My name is Mary. I am frustrated toddler mom. That's the self-description I can give right now. I'm white, I wear glasses, and I have dark hair. And yeah, I don't know how much of me you'll see today, but I hope that we have a beautiful discussion at the comments. Thank you.
I am a white, disabled performance and visual artist. I have short brown hair, dark rimmed glasses, a scarf around my neck, and just a white background. And I am here to talk about my experience of performing with a changing body, and the challenges of that and the creative ways of addressing that. Yeah.
Great, thank you very much. Genevieve?
Hello, my name is Genevieve Rudd. I'm going to visually describe myself. I'm a Caucasian woman in her mid-30s. I have a sort of a cropped, mousy, blondish hair and glasses. I'm wearing a mustardy coloured clothing against a sort of mustard background. So I'm sort of emerging out of a very yellowy space with blue walls and walking sticks that hang on my walls. And I am a community artist, and I have an acquired brain injury disability with a vision impairment. I'm talking about my experience of walking arts and changing body and adapting my practice around those health life experiences.
Brilliant, thank you. Katerina?
Hello, everyone. My name is Katerina. I'm a white woman in my 30s. I have dark hair, speaking to you from Greece. I am a PhD candidate in walking art and sociology of the arts at the University of Western Macedonia in Greece. And I'm also I'm also a licensed hiking guide and co-founder of Karetera, a Greek NGO that works through outdoor activities and cultural walking tours to enhance this inclusion and community resilience. And today I will share with you some insights from my master's research with people living with mild cognitive impairment and dementia, and to think together about what walking teaches us when the body changes.
Great, brilliant, thank you. And Pam, you're going to introduce yourself and then you're going to move into your presentation.
And then I will launch. Yes, I will launch. So my name is Pam Patterson. I'm an elder cisgendered queer white low vision woman with a silver buzz cut and black square glasses. I use the pronouns she, her. I identify as an academic creative and work as a professor at OCAD University here in Toronto. So I'm just going to... So making defection perfection a walking endeavor. So I saw her once hop 40 paces through the public street, and having lost her breath, she spoke and panted that she did make defect perfection and breathless power breathe forth. This is, of course, Enobarbus describing Cleopatra in Act 2, Scene 2 of Shakespeare's Antony and Cleopatra. Perhaps even in the 1600s, there was a recognition of unconventional, passionate, dare we say, even deviant acts by a delimited woman. While postmodern views of Cleopatra are constantly evolving, with some addressing issues around race, power, and sexuality, I intend to take up a different tack. I hold a powerful memory. Working backstage at the Stratford Festival Theatre in Canada in the 1970s, I witnessed a theatrical production in which Dame Maggie Smith, as Cleopatra, had to roughly grapple with and eventually haul a cumbersome, heavy trailing cloak with her as she walked upstage. It was an ugly, demeaning, and yet for me now infinitely provocative sexist and ableist positioning. She became anchored in this action, metaphorically burdened, barely able to complete this walk. Nigerian author Baho Akomolate speaks to the ways we're habituated and even rewarded if we behave as we ought to behave. Perhaps Smith was positioned as Cleopatra in production in such a way to address the weight of social and political expectations and conventions on an erotic and powerful woman. But for me, as an elder woman with disabilities, this recollection asks for a different and more personal interpretation. Disability Theater's Tobin Siebers notes, we all have bodies. This is not a truism. It's not an exercise in the obvious. It's a fact, and a fact of a special kind. The body is, simply put, where everything in human culture begins and ends. So our practices as walking artists begin here in the body. May we find, following Akomolafe, the minor gesture lurking between the pieces in breath-snatching shapes that flash up through the blindingly obvious. So I'm going to speak here today about walking as a cultural and much-loved practice of mine and of key transitions I've made over the last 10 years in my creative walk-related work. I've always loved the act of walking, but the ability to take on walking as the habituated, expected, and assumed is no longer possible. To attempt to do so would mean having to acknowledge and grapple with my own lumbering, cape-engulfing burdens. Walking is now for me the tentative, aided, slow, and considered. My vision is circumspect, my balance is poor, and my stamina limited. So I've recently been influenced by the ingenuous work of friends and colleagues, and Kel Portman and Alyssa Oliva, who have in their collaborations, community inreach, and evocative practices led me to new capabilities. From Kel, I've discovered a sensual quality, found in listening and perceiving, reviewing, and considering, while from Alyssa, I've gained a new appreciation for attentive relational and alternative strategies for thinking together and working together across different languages, places, and platforms. So I'm going to extract 3 works of mine from larger bodies to speak to how I have, as a disability creative, actively hacked, that is, denied, recontextualized, and reframed conventional notions of walking as activity and practice. So as a Feldenkrais awareness through movement practitioner, I've come to understand that how we adapt to a system, practice, or activity is by default to something viable. It doesn't lie in the inherent structure of the system itself. It lies within the fact that we have viability. Feldenkrais trainer Dennis Leary notes that perfection is not situated in and as a body. Rather, it rests in our adaptability. For me, this meant a shift from how I perform walking, from the assumed, generically patterned, and publicly observable, to the subtle, barely perceptible, and internally enacted. So this first work, Sensing an Alteration, Drawing on Water, conflates creative activities, memories, and time. Working from photo documentation taken by artist Miklos Legrady of a moment in a week-long performance residency I did for Fado entitled A Cellular Resistance, A Body Without Organs, I digitally altered and overlaid Legrady's photos with drawings I made of a trio of geese that visited my cottage for table scraps every morning while I was in a residency in Ireland. One of the geese had an impairment which made her walking pattern unique. I layered walking as an action of the other over my own creative inaction. The second work is from the series Ocular Occurrences. Here I made digital color prints by layering medical eye scans with photographs. I then took of borders, boundaries, and edges, and with topographical maps of the locations where I'd been living. Here, walking as practice was recorded, mapped, and historicized as my visual comprehension began to deteriorate. And the third work, Sites of Perception, includes a video, audio recording, and mylar-belted self-portrait stills. Here, walking became vivid and expanded, but viable only as internal and imagined. So I'm going to read as closing the text from the audio description. As the day recedes and autumn arrives, walk so silently that the bottoms of your feet become ears. Follow the path and listen. Come to a halt. Move aside and listen. Listen to the sound of your own body. Recognize everything that has changed and everything that is changing. Let intentions play across your body as your mind tries to sort it out and give it a name. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pam. Okay, Genevieve, there are no questions in the chat about clarification. So Genevieve, if you'd like to start up.
All right. Okay, let's share. Sorry. It's been a little while since I've done this, so I'll do my best. There we are. Okay, hopefully that's visible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so to give a little bit of context about me, my name is Genevieve Rudd. I've been facilitating community arts projects since about 2010-11, and typically in the areas of creative health and environmental and nature connection to arts-based projects, and often this has taken the form of walking arts practices. And a couple of 3 years ago, in 2023, I survived an acquired brain injury, which has left me with different disabilities. So I've been adapting my practice and considering ways I might revisit my work as a community artist and as an artist. And in the last year, that's been made more possible as I've moved from a manual to a power wheelchair, as that's allowed me a lot more freedom of movement and options for places I can visit with more safety and comfort in my body. And that's allowed my creativity to come forth. And so I'm going to show some examples of where my practice has most recently been going. So I have here a clipboard that doesn't seem to be working now. I've been working on a new animation, so I've been thinking about where I was moving and doing walking arts and outdoor nature projects out in the world. I'm thinking about movement through animation and drawing, and my practice has taken me more into the sensory and centered on the sort of physicality of the world. So on the screen, on the bottom left, there is a still from a new animation I've made called Becoming, and it's about my neurosurgeries and long hospitalization, my experience of acquired brain injury. And unfortunately, with its technical capabilities, I can't actually make that play, but it would have been a little clip of it. But I will be releasing it online to share through my website once I've been able to share it locally. And it's a picture of a cyanotype watery print with a blue hospital glove over the top, which is my hand, and one of my care gloves from hospital, and on my arm I'm wearing a TED stocking which I wore for one of my neurosurgeries as my sort of costume for the animation piece called Becoming. On the right of the screen is a photo of my foot. I'm in a physio gym and I have crayons taped around my foot, and I'm experimenting with how my body now moves. And I was trying to capture my new gait, and I've learnt to walk in about 2024. When I left hospital in May 24, I was still non-walking, despite half a year of intensive inpatient neuro rehab. And so I've still been continuing on my rehab practices in community setting, and that's where this photo was taken, in my physio gym with my physiotherapist. I got her to support me with my walking practices to try and capture my new gait as I moved between the walking bars. But it was quite a tricky thing to do, to capture that new gait, but I'm still experimenting. And later on in the spring, I'm going to be in a residency project for a weekend, experimenting with drawing with my new disabled body. So I've been recovering from hemiplegia on my left side, paralysis, and so I'm finding ways I can draw and move, playing with, on the left is still for my animation, and on the right, new ways to use my disabled body. So thinking about new possibility, but this new possibility comes at very high personal cost in terms of energy and capacity and effort, as my physicality and my cognitive ability has declined because of acquired brain injury. And it takes great levels of effort and support to make these experiments. But I hope that I can keep on and keep building my capacity. So that has been where my current arts practice has been taking me. And last year, I was able to revisit some of my community walking arts practices. I've just got some photos which I'll describe on the screen of some group walks that I led with disability groups. So on the bottom left, we're a very rainy day at the Sainsbury's Centre for Visual Art, based at the University of East Anglia in Norfolk, and it's October. It's very grey and it's drizzling with rain, and we're a group standing around, mostly with umbrellas, around a Henry Moore sculpture which lounges near the entrance of the gallery. We took a walk around, and the group is a Parkinson's group based in the city of Norwich. So we took a very purposely, slowly paced as much as we could in the weather conditions, with lots of rest stops and some simple noticing activities, thinking about the flow between our bodies. And our bodies, each of us had different neurological differences, the group with Parkinson's, myself with my acquired brain injury, and thought about how that mirrored in a landscape where we might saw the branching, like around the lake, there's this very large body of water, and then around it are different figure type sculptures. And then we have the branching of the trees that reached up beyond us, above us, and sometimes brushing against ourselves and our faces as we walked through. And we captured them through some simple drawing and writing techniques. So back onto the other two pictures on my slideshow. One is a track around another body of water in Norwich with a youth disability group based in a city. We went on a walk and we used lots of sensory ways to tune in, and we had a group of children and their carer supporters exploring the ways our senses were evoked by the landscape around us. A much more pleasant day. We were lucky with the sunshine on that day, even though it's the same season. It was in the autumn, but we got lucky with the weather like we did today. And on the right on the screen is a group of us at the seaside. We're in Galston in Great Yarmouth on the East Norfolk coast, and I was piloting a project last year which I called Ambulatory Imaginations, and it was a cohort of pilot sessions for other people affected by neurological disability. And we walked in watery blue spaces, blue natural spaces, and thought about that link again between our bodies and our kind of broken and disrupted cycles within our bodies, and looking at places like this coast and the Broads and rivers, and where we saw our disrupted neurological bodies mirrored in the watery landscapes, again through simple creative prompts. And on the screen is another shot of our group. This time we are by the water, but we're in amongst the reeds. I think I've got something, sorry. I'm faffing about because I really struggle with the paper and the screen simultaneously, but I think I'm on the right track now. So on this slide, I wanted to talk about some thoughts and considerations around access and walking arts and disability. So here are some things that I consider when I've been piloting and leading some walking arts activity in the context of groups with disabilities. So I wanted just to make sure, because I've sort of come up against some of these assumptions, that don't assume that because people are using mobility aids like sticks, chairs, whatever they might be, that removes all of the effort of walking or moving through a space. Use of aids comes with its own considerations and efforts, and there is still a need to consider the pace very carefully, and where your physical body might be extra supported, the sensory and the social stimulation is very effortful too, especially when walking as a group. And so I want to just share that as a point. And that using an aid to walk is not less than. And I've personally, as going from someone who was ambulatory before I had my surgeries and the complications of acquired brain injury, I've had to work through a lot of my own sort of frustration and grief. I suppose that sort of internalized sort of ableism about how I access the world and be in and amongst the living natural world is different because I need aids and adaptations. I've come to be gentle with myself and understand it's not less than, it's still valid even if it's different. And what I've learned is something that really caused me a point of frustration that led me to kind of feel those difficult feelings was that as soon as you get put in your chair, you're now at a different angle to the world. And that becomes so frustrating because nothing is built for you, nothing is considered for you. You're suddenly at this dropped height, you're at everyone's waistline. And the world is built for everyone being upright and ambulatory, and how cut off that can be. And even when you're out in a natural landscape, there'll be paths and signage and facilities set up that don't really consider that when you're a wheelchair user, you're suddenly in a dropped position. And in certain natural spaces that can feel really immersive, and I think it gives something more. I'm having a deeper experience than someone is who's upright and ambulatory because I'm sunken amongst, like in this photo, I'm there in the sun hat in the middle, I'm sunken amongst the sort of reed beds. So I feel like, if anything, I'm in that respect, I'm having a heightened and a deeper sort of natural experience to somebody might. But when it comes to using maybe the cafe or the toilets or trying to read the signage, that's when the problem starts with the sort of human-made infrastructure. I miss out often being at a lowered wheelchair height, but when it comes to actually being in a natural environment, I think sometimes it's given me more. I'm sunken into the landscape. And when I was doing my scoping survey to pilot and prepare for my ambulatory imaginations pilot sessions, the groups of people, individuals that I worked with really made it very clear to me that they wanted me to deeply consider the meeting location and the rest points, make sure it's weather protected, whether that's sun or rain. They were very conscious about the location, how exposed to the weather they were or not, and made sure that there was different options for seating and plenty of table space. There has to be refreshments, and toilets is something I talk a lot about because there was a time that when I was non-walking and I still wanted to go out and be part of the world, I could only go to places which had a change in places toilet facility, which I don't know if that's just national around the UK changing places, but they are the gold standard of toilet facilities, as they include a hoist. So that would be, how I'd use their facilities through hoist lifting, and they have changing beds, they have shower setups, they're the gold standard. So those facilities, whether we're talking about seating and refreshments and cafes, but I think toilets are key. If you haven't got your basic human needs met, then you can't get out and access the world. It's a huge barrier and becomes even more prominent when you become disabled, because suddenly your whole worldly experience gets drawn into your body in a very much more heightened way, I've found. And I just wanted to just share that. And practical consideration. Oh yes, so something I've learnt myself through my own experimentation is now I need to use different mobility aids like sticks and chairs. Is when you're using aids, it very much can interrupt or present new challenges for what types of creative activities you can engage in. So I've found my own setup. So I have the weather writer clipboard on my lap, which has a little sort of weather protecting little flap up sort of clear screen around it that I can lean to and put papers and materials onto. If I'm stood, I need a stick to stand, therefore my only functioning right hand isn't available. And I've been working with my OTs to work on different methods for keeping track of or laying out materials so that I use my lap. And it's taken a lot of OT sensory re-education to be able to tolerate having a weather writer clipboard on my lap, because on my left side, my hemisensory loss meant that my sensation was very distorted and heightened to pain. And so it's been a very long journey to be able to tolerate having things on my lap, therefore being able to go out in a wheelchair, put a surface on my lap, be able to do my art, and also have a plan so I can lead a walk on an accessible track with a group. And something I am still working out is I have, as a result of the stroke hemorrhage I have a slightly softened voice, difficult to project. And so one of my OTs really wants to get me a little microphone, but I'm quite resistant about that because I feel a little bit shy about projecting my voice too much, especially when I'm out with a group in a natural place. But I just wanted to share with you some of the practical considerations that I've considered around accessibility in walking arts projects. And for my next slide, I've got some thoughts on the type of arts and creative activity that you might do. So I'm going to read off this slide and describe what's happening on it. So my first point is, if possible, I would encourage you to survey or ask your cohort what they already do creatively or in terms of walking, and build on that. Always work from what people are already into as your basis and build up from it. And that, when we're thinking about disability, we're talking about such a broad spectrum of the human experience. And I'd really encourage you to really deepen into the already knowledge of the people you may be doing walking arts practice with. Start with them, their life experiences, their capabilities and interests first, and build up from that. And in terms of getting to know your group, I would encourage you to welcome the use of their usual adaptation tools and devices. Don't think about those as hindrances, but think about how they might be creatively and imaginatively used to build up arts practice from. And when it comes to simple warming up or warming down activities, something as straightforward as noticing, for example, on that picture, I have two photos side by side. One is of a disabled young person. She has a piece of bark in her hand, and we were just enjoying noticing textures in a woodland type area. And then in the right hand picture, we're using mirrors with a group that I was doing at a site. So we were just noticing the shadows, the lights, the shapes. And what I wanted to say is about those types of sensory activities is a really great way to start and get into walking arts practices, but that might be exactly where the disability comes through. So for example, I have hemisensory sort of touch loss on my left side, and have a left-sided vision impairment. So whilst sensory activities can be great in a walking art context, that can be where the impairment or the disability may show itself. And I think I've probably gone hours over my time, but those were the things I wanted to say.
No, thank you very much, Genevieve, and I'm really pleased you went through all those things, the learnings that you've got from it. So that's really helpful.
So I'm Leena Raudvee again, and I identify as a disabled performance art and visual artist. And I can't read from the screen, so I'm reading from my printed text here, just so you know I'm looking down because of that. So I consider my changing body and my struggle to walk as performance material, a way to process the external labeling and ableism through my own practice. As my muscles weaken, I am constantly negotiating with my environment to find new ways to move. And so this is an image description of this image. There are multiple images of Leena with dark rimmed glasses and dark pants and green shirt, walking with walking sticks through a room full of people. Photo by Miklos Legrady. For several years, I'd been falling, finding myself sprawled out on the ground, unable to get up. A public spectacle, something to be stared at, accommodated, and judged in silence. In 2018, I was diagnosed with a muscular degenerative disease that makes many daily gestures precarious and vulnerable. Getting up from a chair is difficult. Getting up from the ground is, indeed, completely impossible. Image description. This is Leena lying on the floor, trying to pull herself forward with just her hands. She has short brown hair, dark rimmed glasses, and is wearing a dark green shirt. Photo by Aidan Crook. In response to the diagnosis, I created a performance called Teetering on an Edge for Pillory, and later performed for video as precarious gestures for Crip Ritual at the Doris McCarthy Gallery at UTSC. In both, I purposely let go of my walking sticks and allowed myself to fall. Slowly, cautiously. Using just my hands, I crawled over to a stool to pull myself up. It was dangerous, but I was in control. And I just want to add that throughout my performance practice, I've maintained a connection to the drawn line. In this case, a line on a piece of paper as metaphor for my body standing, my walking stick lying on the floor. Image description for walking with hands. A black and white split screen image. On the left, there's a view of Leena's back, arms stretched out, hands on walls, as she walks down the hall in her home. On the right, a close-up of one hand, leaning against the wall for support. Screenshot from video by Alexandra Helis. Last year, in a project called Finding Balance, I was investigating how to record the precarity of my walking through drawing and video. Alexandra Helis recorded a walk without my walker through my house, focusing on my hands, holding onto walls, chairs, counters, to keep from falling. This is a black and white screenshot of hands holding hands from a video by Alexandra Helis. Continuing my work on finding balance, in a residency at Tangled Art and Disability Gallery, I was exploring how to negotiate and accept help from others to walk without falling. I invited 2 other performance artists, researchers, to help me walk. We wrote contracts for one another on what we were willing and able to do to walk safely without falling. And then we walked. Walking without a walker, with one trusted companion on each side, brought unexpected pleasure. I did not have to struggle to find my footing, to stay upright. I could look straight ahead, not just at the ground, and just walk. It was like flying.
Do you see my presentation?
Not yet.
Not yet? Okay. Let's see now.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. So
We don't have it as full screen. We only have it as showing your notes.
yeah. And what about now? Not sure. Did that change anything? No.
No. Not to worry if you want to keep going.
Okay. Here?
Ah, yeah. Success.
Okay, great. So I was thinking about skipping the introduction, since we did that in the beginning, self description. And I will go to the second slide to share with you some insights from my master's research and how did all this began. So I said that I mentioned that I'm working as a hiking guide, and I did a master's in applied sociology and community-based arts. And I was interested in that research. So it all began very personally, as my grandmother, who raised me as a child, has been living with dementia for over a decade. So working with the community of Frodizo. Frodizo is the daycare center for elderly and people with dementia in Patras in Greece. Was not a neutral research. It was also a way of revisiting my own experience, trying to understand what changes internally when someone you love begins to move through the world differently. So this work is both academic and relational. The question I kept returning in my research was when walking needs to be relearned and supported or negotiated, as we said before, as it was dropped in the discussion, and what does it actually become? So I found that it becomes something relational, attentive, and very rich. So that's a photo of the group that we were working with. I was walking with once a month. This was a participatory action art-based research. We worked with 10 participants aged 60 to 80 years old at this daycare center. And the process followed a simple rhythm. We were walking, and then we had a collective discussion on that walk, and then some creative session. The walk was not an activity like before the art, or sometimes it was like that. The walk could be also the artistic and social core. As Genevieve mentioned, it was all about negotiating the accessibility, the pacing, the weather conditions. Of course, we had some obstacles. but with the help of other the caregivers, some social workers, of course, the weather dependencies and time constraints. All that was discussed in the group discussion before and after each walk. So the walks were designed around this accessibility issue. It was 1 up to 2 hours in a path through a historic or an already known path, familiar to all participants. And I also have on this slide, I have some participants' voices. They mentioned that one mentioned that where I showed I was getting tired, some stayed with me, and the group dares things you don't dare alone. Another participant said it was a walk, it was also an exercise for memory, and I wanted both. We will come back to this collective daring, dare to dare things, and slowing down is a radical act. The route, the rhythm, the repetition, and the rest were part of the process of the protocol. So just to mention a few things, participants named the organized walking group as the primary, the main tool that enabled walking for them. The collective became a functional extension of their individual capacity. So we designed the route as an artwork. It was, I wrote it like visitor-centered, but it was like a person-centered. It was dynamic, it was flexible, it was adaptable in real time to physical capacity, of course, posing and the rerouting. And why we have chosen familiar places? Because that offered cognitive scaffolding through place attachment. We were coming back to personal memories and collective memories from childhood trips or family trips, school trips, and with the photo voice method that really helped into that triggered some prior knowledge, reduced the disorientation, enabling deeper engagement with the new experience. Also, these discussions strengthened within the group. It was as well as the trust, the reciprocity, the shared identity, which made the walking art, this art-based practice, producing some knowledge that clinical settings often cannot do. It was more embodied, it was relational and place-based, and it was of everything softened. So here I underlined the protocol, the walk, the collective discussion, and it was all about this movement and generating the aesthetic experience. And of course, producing this social capital, the bonds that we were aiming at. So what came out from these sessions, we had a creative writing session where at the end, members of the walking group even imagined and wrote about imaginary co-housing project that they wanted to build up in the future. And this idea emerged from the discussions because we have visited a big vineyard where workers were living all together, and it was very interesting for them of how life would be in not in a daycare center, but somewhere that they could live there all together and sharing all these walks and collect everyday living practices. Then we had another session. I will have some pictures next. The next pictures are showing this the shell of memory. We went on a walk at the shore, and we were collecting seashells, and we tried to rewrite this history about the empty shell dementia stigma through the landscape and the art making session. So that's part of our art making session. People from the working group were working with the shells in order to create pots, flower pots made out of seashells that were collected at the shore during our walk by the water. And the discussions were all about reframing the empty shell metaphor of dementia into a vessel of life, like containing life, containing soil, and then containing life. So it was not about decorating the care, but rewriting this language. What we can share about our experience and to encourage the walking art, I wanted to mention that this organized action was the key. Participants repeatedly named the structure, the organized group, as the decisive factor of getting out of their homes. And somebody said that everyone wants it, but without a group to push us, like time is never found, or that was the main motivation. Like, if the others go, then I will walk with them. And again, that a walk through historically or personally meaningful sites is the factor that activates memory, sensory engagement with the landscape and the community solidarity. And place attachment is part of the therapeutic resource. So I would like also to drop a question in the discussion. Like, if walking were understood as a collective, supported and adaptable rather than individual ability, how these walking arts reshape health and care. In our project, in our research, walking was described as collective daring. So doing what one would never attempt alone. And perhaps walking arts do not restore independence, but it's this, they are cultivating this interdependence, which is very interesting. And the way that participants envisioned co-organizing routes, guiding each other, creating this community arts practice, created this bonding social capital that we were very, very proud. And we saw walking art as the connective tissue between the people. So people living with dementia and mild cognitive impairment, their caregivers, family members, the community, general community, and of course institutions, because we had, of course, contact with the places that we visited. And thank you. I look forward to hearing from you as well, what you think, if you have any questions.
Let's go, and maybe a panelist. The other panelists, would you like to answer that question that Katerina is asking? What if walking was never an individual act? Would each of the panelists like to try to answer that? Genevieve, you put some comment down.
Oh, Oh, I was putting that emoji that looks like a scream face because of Mary's distorted sci-fi voice. I just thought it was quite horrifying. But I think there's something very important about what that question poses about that moving beyond sympathy into very deep, like empathetic, if we talk about changing bodies, that moving with you can get a sense of starting from the kind of physicality and the sort of sensory ways that changed bodies can perceive things. I think moving beyond an individual act to a collective could be a deep way of finding empathy, maybe particularly between the sort of the lived experience person and the sort of caregiver type relationship. That could be a real sort of strengthening point.
Yeah, Pam, you've raised your hand.
I'm used to very formal situations. I think what I would say would probably be along the lines of what Genevieve has as well. Because for me, this kind of idea of the collective or supported, and I love the word adaptive. I think that was, oh, I know, I'm thinking of Leena, who used the word negotiated, which I love as well. And of course, this notion sort of moves me to a more socially engaged and kind of a co-responsible model. Sorry, I've got lung issues. One of the things I was thinking of, and I think you talk about this as well, Genevieve, when you were talking about a deep empathy, is often I've experienced, and this is because I've been doing this disability work now for over 20 years, that often sort of care in relationship to people with disabilities can often be experienced as an unequal relationship between kind of the able-bodied and the other. And so my experience is sometimes that it's felt patronizing and kind of condescending. And that was a really difficult challenge for me when kind of disability work was starting to appear here in Canada, is that often it was facilitated by able-bodied folks. And often the expectation I'm thinking about in medical situations, like when I was going through breast cancer, there were sort of organizations that were set up to provide support with people with breast cancer. And often it was, again, that same kind of sensibility. And I felt very uncomfortable. It was kind of like, is the good act or the charitable act? So one of the things I've been really interested in, and partly this is the academic work I'm doing, with a lab through OCAD University. So I prefer this idea right now of a co-community of care within the disability community. So mutual care, mutual creativity, and dare we say, mutual joy. That idea of nothing about us without us. And that sort of flows out of my doctoral work, which I also did 20 years ago, where I was looking at the value of kind of caucuses or separatist communities, where there's an opportunity for us to provide innovative ways of understanding and working. And in this case, we're talking about the walking arts, and walking for me as art as well. So thank you for that. And thank you so much, Genevieve, as well, for your kind of pushing this towards what do we understand to be kind of this collective, empathetic relationship. And that's something I don't have an answer to, but I'm glad you raised it. So thank you.
Leena, do you want to say something? And then I think what we'll do is we'll turn it over to the audience, because we've got 2 or 3 people who've been contributing to the chat, and it'd be great to get them to have a chance to say something.
Yeah, sure. That'd be great. And just as a note, I can't read the chat. Just my eyes don't do this. So if there is a question, if you could read it out before it's answered. Thank you. For me, collective walking means I have difficulty walking on my own. I'm always looking for support or care from somewhere. And so I think of collective walking with other people as an accessibility issue for me. And it's interesting what Pam was saying about, the patronizing, the needing to be supported, and then people being there to support you. And there's always that question of where is the care coming from? I have a tendency to trust it and to accept it. And particularly as I'm grappling with the needing to ask for help, that as I need to ask for help, I also need to acknowledge that there is sort of an interdependence in the way we address care that is difficult for the person offering as it is for me to accept. So I just throw that into the mix of collective, walking with, and I love the with part. That's it.
Oh, that's great. Katerina, do you want to say anything more after you've heard those answers, and then we go to the other people in the meeting? Do you want to say anything?
Still processing some of the things that Pam and Genevieve, of course, Leena mentioned, and I would be interested to hear more from them or from the audience.
Okay, so there's some good stuff on the chat from Greg, Claire, and Patty. I've spotted. So, Claire, would you like to have first go? Do introduce yourself and self-describe yourself first. But you've asked the questions of 2 or 3 of the panelists. So,
hello, everybody. Really nice to meet you all. I'm Claire. I'm an artist. I work very near in the same area as Genevieve, actually, which is how I heard about her this talk tonight. So well done, Genevieve. That was great. Bigging up Norfolk there for us. I am a white woman in my 50s. I've got reddish, blondish, brownish hair that's short, and I'm living with chronic illness. So I'm trying to go back in the chat and try and remember what I asked different people, because I'm not great at remembering stuff. Hang on.
if you read out your question again, or I can read one out.
Yeah. I don't. Yeah. Read. Hang on. Where are we?
Well, you've got one.
Oh yeah. I asked Pam, didn't I? Whether do you use your work with that wonderful bit of audio description that you told us from the moving image, would you then use something like that as a script for people who can't go walking to do an imagined walk? Do you do that sort of group work yourself, or do you just present, not just, but you know what I mean, do you present your work as something for others to take in individually?
Claire, it's Pam here. I'd never thought of that. But I think that's, I have led walks. I remember doing one during the pandemic on the Millennium Trail in Prince Edward County. And we used WhatsApp. So in fact, we actually created our own narrative in relationship to the walk itself. And because it was during the pandemic, of course, you weren't allowed to walk with somebody, right? So the Millennium Trail I was living in the country. I actually came from the country. I lived in the country for 35 years. So it was very much that sense of how to create. And this I owe a lot to Alyssa, who I was very fortunate to also have opportunities to participate with her work at the beginning of the pandemic. So it was really because this trail is so long, it stretches miles around this island, is that you could step onto it in that common experience, regardless of where you were. But I think what's happening with me is partly because of my age, partly because of the health stuff I'm dealing with. I'm really beginning, this is just a new thing for me. So I am really thinking of this as kind of an internalized practice. And part of the questions that we were kind of generating through Andrew and Mary's help was sort of this idea around hacking and adaptation. Sort of tools, techniques, and rhythms was one word that came up. And I love that idea of rhythms. Which sort of expands on notions of crypt time in a much more complex and interesting way. So by this idea of kind of talking someone through is, for sure, we absolutely do have access to tools and techniques that can act both conceptually and practically, I would almost say as prostheses that would extend our involvement in the world and our creative making. But my interest has become now sort of in the textures I feel under my feet, or the sounds I hear, or the smells that I inhale. So for me, to hack this act of walking is to both subvert the normalized way that we understand a walk and also to expand the creative potential found in the art of walking. So, that's a huge continuum here where we have opportunities to kind of develop what walking looks like. So rather than becoming, so thank you so much for this. It's so interesting. So rather than becoming kind of accommodated so that we can walk as close to as a normalized person is, how can we rather flip that and look at the resilience and the creativity and the strategies and kind of the interesting ways that we can either walk with or walk in our minds, or so that to me really then provides an opportunity to expand the idea of walking. So nothing is normalized anymore. And it does become this extraordinarily creative practice. So thank you.
And a very rich one. A very rich
And a very
one.
rich one. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
as Genevieve, and just to pick up and echo that, Pam, what I was trying to say in my presentation was about how actually, I'm walking with a group of people, say I'm in my chair and other people are upright and ambulatory. Actually, I could be having a much more kind of closer and richer encounter with nature from my lower position than they are being all upright and tall and looking over things. Actually, maybe I'm not always having a negotiated sort of undercut position. Actually, I could be having a deeper, more immersed, that could actually be, that's not always a lesser. We're not always in a lesser position if we use our aids or adaptations or doing it in a disabled way. It's not always a lesser than thing.
Oh, can I respond, Genevieve? Yes. Isn't that marvelous? It's sort of it's to kind of shift it, isn't it? It's the language that I find challenging. It's that piece around kind of resistance and adaptability is kind of this joyful and deviant act that deconstructs this mainstream narrative. That's what really interests me. So as Genevieve says, it's not so much about thinking about what I as a disabled body have lost, but rather about exploring the resilience and deviant pathways that can make my understanding of walking truly an art. I don't know if people are familiar, and I've just forgotten his name, isn't that? Carmen Papalia's work, who is a blind Canadian artist. And he actually leads walks, right? And he's totally blind. And he will rehearse these places, so that he can lead walks. And he invites people to stand in a line behind him, all with their eyes closed. So he leads people on these walks, right, as a blind individual. So inviting them to kind of enter into this relationship of trust, which really came out so much in sort of Katerina's presentation as well, but also being able to experience the walk in a totally different way. So Carmen's really interesting. Yeah, thank you.
Patty, you posed a couple of comments. Would you like to say anything and introduce yourself? And
Who, me?
Yes, you.
Well, I know Pam and I know Leena. Leena better than Pam, but boy, I just have to say I'm humbled because I can't say I have any disabilities yet, even though I'm 75. But I love how Leena had said, yes, if it brings something to us, even though we don't have a disability, to open our eyes to, and I mean, every one of these people on the panel have been so creative. So I'm sorry, I didn't know I was going to talk. But I'm humbled. I'm humbled. And I'm so glad I came on board with this. I'm glad Leena sent me the email. But gosh, you got to see Leena's visual work too. Her work is mostly performance, but she has blended it with visuals. And gosh, Leena, you blow my mind. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay.
I just want to respond.
Please do. Yeah.
Patty, thank you. That's all.
Okay, Greg, you've been very patiently waiting. Do you want to, you're a carer. Would you like to talk a bit more about the individual act of walking or the role of the carer, the balance between you and who you care for?
Well, I'll introduce myself by saying I'm Greg Holman. I'm 65. I don't know what color my hair is, but I'm glad to have it. I live in Palm Desert, California, and I didn't really feel the need to talk. I certainly enjoyed the presentation. I mean, the dynamic of a caregiver and my partner is certainly difficult, particularly as our house has no doors, and she could possibly hear me speaking now, and I don't know if I want her to hear me speaking, which is part of that problematic relationship. But yeah, I just would just say related to not wanting to be the healthy person that says, why don't we do this? As I said in the chat or alluded to, she has actually taken an interest in the sky and constellations. So all we have to do is, if we can just walk a short walk, we have the sky, which has all the stories there, and it eliminates that idea of, well, for example, having to travel to somewhere to do something. It's right there, and then you've got that whole time, documented relationship we have to the sky and being close and far. And anyway, I'll leave it at that. So, and she has initiated that, so that's the good part, or one of the good parts.
Well, thank you very much for sharing with us, Greg. And are there other people in the chat? I'm just seeing. I see Tamsin. You've chipped in just here at the end. Do you want to pop say anything? Are you there, Tamsin?
Yes, I'm here. I'm very interested in being challenged by seeing the world from as many different angles as possible, and so I guess that's what I'm fiddling around with in the chat. That what is it? People have been using the word disability. What is a disability? Maybe my disability is that I don't know what it's like to be in a wheelchair, to see the world from a different height or from a different angle or without sight or whatever. So I'm just grateful to be challenged and to be that questions are being stimulated like this, to help me see the world differently. So thank you.
Okay, no, thank you. And on the call is Elisa. Lisa, you were mentioned by Pam. Would you would you like to say anything about your experiences and?
Yeah, you're good at putting people on the spot, Andrew.
You're going to describe yourself. You're going to say who you are and describe yourself.
I am a white woman wearing actually quite new, huge glasses, and have a long, what is it called? Fringe, which is growing, so it's not going to be a fringe. And I'm wearing a metal chain that my friend made, and it looks dark, but it's actually green jumper. But yeah, I really, I mean, I'm a big fan of Pam's work, so it was a real privilege to be here and hear you speak again. And it always fascinates me, although I know a lot of your work, but that was really beautifully and sharply put together, and learning a lot from all the other four of you, and also as a practicing walking artist who does invite quite often anyone to join. I'm learning also a lot of because I sometimes think I've thought of all the things I should be aware of or ask, or but then there's constantly more, so it's like a constant, again using Leena's word, negotiation. Yeah, so I feel like today was really I'm grateful for more things that I'm thinking about and imagining and dreaming, and I like the shells present in this evening as well. So yeah, I don't think I have a formulated question, so that would be my voicing. But yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry to put you on the spot. However, there's Bill Lemming. Is that Bill Leeming or Bill Lemming? Has raised his hand.
That's Bill Leeming. That's
Bill
Leeming. Leeming's an old Yorkshire name.
Excellent. Well, Bill, you raised your hand, so you can be on the spot. Here you go.
Oh, I can indeed. I'm a colleague of Pam's. Pam and I have worked at OCAD University I've been there 41 years. So at any rate, and Rachel Clayson, who was here, is also, she's a grad student at OCA that I'm working very closely with. The panelist that I want to respond to in particular is Katerina. Katerina's still here. She's working with the situationalist situation. Oh, I guess I should have explained that yes, I am a person with a disability. I have all sorts of disabilities. I have seizures. I have 2 kinds of arthritis, and just suffice it to say that at any one time I can be being treated by 11 specialists who tend to keep me going. But come back to Katerina's work. There's points there that really interest me with the way you're working with the psychogeographic drift, in part because of work that I'm doing with Rachel currently. I teach a course in health and society. I'm a sociologist. And one of the things I teach in the course is autopathographies, illness essays, and so forth. About half the class who will be taking my course tend to be people with diagnosed conditions, disabilities. They don't have to talk about them if they don't wish to, that's fine. But the other half take the course because they want to talk about diet and going to the gym and all these physical regimens for maintaining health. So I had to come up a way with working with them. There's no point in getting them to do autopathographies. They're all in their 20s and they're well, even younger in some cases. And, they've never had a day in their life when they're sick, or so they tell me. That's not the case, but at any rate, so I came up with a counterpoint to autopathography, which I call autoideography. I haven't published on it yet, but that's something that Rachel and I are working towards. But in this case, what I'm trying to get them to do is examine, not how they follow a formula, diets or whatever, but how they deal and cope with everyday life, because they may never have experienced an illness in their life, so they say, but stress, enormous, huge. And I always get them on that point. So how do you cope with that? And Rachel made the observation when she was reading some of the autobiographies from them that none of them come from a place of joy, which I thought was really, really important here. And I hadn't made that observation myself. So I asked her, well, how can she come from a place of joy? So Rachel and I wanted to look at that. And currently we're doing a project where I'm working on an pathography, which is easy for me. It'll actually be an illness essay. But she's working on the autoideography part. And she is coming at this from the perspective of running and using running. Now, how do we develop a method around this? And she's a brilliant conversationalist. She's great for doing interviews and so forth. She's wonderful to talk to. And so how does she talk to herself? But that's the first point. And I think this would be a point for Katerina as well. How do you talk to yourself? And actually, it was a Zadie Smith little book, Intimations, which was written during the COVID pandemic. She talks about talking to herself. That's the first thing she took away from Marcus Aurelius. And but the second thing is when she writes it down, it's as though somebody is overlooking this or she's passing it on to something. So this is really where we're working on this now, getting Rachel really attuned to, well, acknowledging that we talk to ourselves. But then that next step of, and Katrina's put it very well when she talks about enabling physical movement, producing social capital, that movement through sites activates memory, community, solidarity, and sensory engagement. Now, I think that is quite brilliant. Because this is what we encounter too. And I'm capable of walking. I may fall over every so often. I lose my balance. However, I'm capable of walking, and part of the joy of it is, I mean, I never use a treadmill. I would never use a treadmill. I walk around my community because I have a great sense of community, who my neighbors are. I want to see community changes. I tend to chat to people a lot. I mean, this is really, I can see the point of joy that comes in with this. So I just wanted to make that point. So I don't know if Katrina wants to respond, but.
Thank you, Bill, for mentioning that. Yeah, we were using part of the psychogeographic the method, the derive, as a score, just to feel what why do you come here today? It was just a question that we were dropping at the beginning of our meeting. And then during our walk, we were discussing a lot about our feelings because, if we were able to write, then we would introduce a walking diary as well, a diary in order to write about the feelings in each pose. but we thought it was better to discuss, because within the discussion and during the discussion, more people got motivation to share, and that was even better than writing, because not everyone was able to write, and that was very interesting. Like if that connects also to your students, like how their feelings, like the joy that they get from being out there, and what are the memories, and what is what they are evoking, what this path is evoking. That was very interesting, because from one stop to another, from one site, or from one, how can I call it, like from one pause to the next one, they had the time, and they would share more and more. In the beginning, everybody was more introvert, I would say, and then that was really helpful in the end, sharing their feelings, and of course with the pictures, and sometimes I was inviting them to bring pictures if they had at home from this place, or related before or that or after this visiting this site, if they had any kind of event that was connected to this site, and that was very, very interesting. And of course, all the creative writing that took place afterwards, that was also very interesting. Then poems again. We were doing a lot of interesting like art things in the art making. You can come up with very brilliant ideas. And of course, participants themselves are bringing a lot of great ideas.
Well, what Rachel is doing is she's actually talking into a recorder. So while she's running, so we're still trying to work out the bugs of how that becomes comfortable. But so she's literally acknowledging she's talking to herself, despite the fact we do that with our brains. The question is now how she now transposes this into writing, some way of communicating with others, so the others become, part of the community of talkers that are part of her talking to herself, and the possibility of a conversation. But thank you.
Oh, it's Pam here. Can I jump in? Oh my God, this is so exciting. Sorry. Bill, thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to hear what you're working on, and lovely to hear the connection as well with Katerina. And I just want to reach back to Alyssa as well, who's one of the most innovative community walkers, facilitators that I know. It's interesting, just as an idea here, is that I had someone speaking in my class. It was part of an OCAD actually event that I set up that happened yesterday with this woman, Stacy Spruill, and she's a programs director for the Prince Edward Arts Council. And she's also a community artist, and she works as an animator. So she's actually she works with industrial designers, right? And they've created this kind of movable, so that while she herself can't move so well, she has this almost like roboticized movable object, right? That will be photographing and videotaping. And this is a project she's doing, as I mentioned earlier, on the Millennium Trail. And then when she finally develops the work itself, she has both the photographs of the site itself, and then she also has an image of this little tool with its own little screen with drawings on it. So there's this constant relationship between how she is interpreted through these drawings and how the actual site itself looks. And it's all sort of lodged along this trail. So that might be a way of doing it as well. I think Patty mentioned earlier to Leena about your drawings. And to me, they're a wonderful strategy as well for kind of creating that opportunity for self-reflection and talking to yourself, and then bringing them forward into a visual form as well. So I think, for me, I think disability arts in general is kind of the new, right? is that there is a lot of potential here to kind of challenging the ways that we as artists make art, but it's also challenging the way that we can move through the world and represent that in very complex ways. So anyway, Bill, I'd love to hear more about your project, and I will invite you briefly, just invite you to come and at some point bring you and Rachel to come and speak to Crip Lab, because we now have and we support undergraduate students, but we now have about 40 academics from the UK, the US, and Canada that are working around this as well. So thank you.
I would love to do that.
Pam, can you, is that something that people can link and find out more about? Is there a link that you can put in the chat?
Yeah, I can put a link into a very poorly designed blog that I have on Crip Lab, but it'll give a sense of some of the things.
Yeah, no, that'd be great.
Yeah.
And what I'll do is I'll circulate the chat with the follow-up email once we've edited the video. I think we ought to sort of start to wrap it up. So what I'd like to offer is that each of our panelists, if they've got the energy and stamina, to have the final word. So if each of you would like to say something, and then we'll wrap it up. But Pam, you presented first. You have the final word. Then Genevieve, Leena, and we'll end with Katerina.
I have a little story. I'm going to do a little story. My grandfather and my grandparents actually were quite an interesting matched pair. And they lived with each other in relative harmony for over 60 years. And my grandmother was a great walker and would stride with enormous amount of energy through the neighborhood. My grandfather, not so much. So about from the age of 80 to 93, his body went through sort of many shifts. But this didn't limit his creative output as he continued to conduct until the age of 93. He worked as a teacher, a performer, adjudicator, and a choral conductor. And so his understanding of walking shifted as he aged, right? And I remember we were at this family reception, and he was probably in his late 80s. And he leaned over to me, and one of the comments he said was he felt it was no longer up to him to walk to other people. It was now time for them to walk to him. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Genevieve.
Oh, thank you. Oh, I love that. I've already got myself in a reclining position. I'm trying to just pace and rest where I can to sustain. And maybe just picking up on what Pam said, that maybe our practice is about challenging and seeing beyond the medical model that, we have problems that need fixing, but actually maybe we can give something to the world that is greater than what has already been experienced. That switching the way around, like your grandparent, like maybe we have things to give to the world rather than the world trying to fix us.
Great, thank you.
I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Leena.
Okay, thank you to Andrew and Genevieve and Katerina and Pam for this discussion. Wonderful to hear about all your work. I guess my parting comment would be to reflect back on joy. And one of the places where, as somebody who is visibly disabled, I use a walker, I need help for going to the washroom, all those things that Genevieve mentioned about, having to how to cope in the outside world. Joy is when everything is just given, where I don't have to ask for anything. The washroom's accessible, the doors are accessible, there are ramps, or there's no need for ramps because everything is just built on the right level. And to not have to ask for anything and just be is my idea of joy.
Great. Thank you, Leena. And Katerina, you have the last word.
Sure. And that is partly an answer to what Claire asked me in the chat, and I saw it after she left. She was asking if my research kind of reframes walking as a ride, and I would say yes. So my work or research suggests that walking is not simply an individual determined ability, capacity, or act, but it should be a shared, collectively negotiated and reimagined practice, or condition, civic condition, and yeah, with more care, as we said, support, practice, I would say. I would close with that. And thank you all for your contributions.
Anyway, okay, well, thanks everyone, and especially to our panelists.